All right, so I'm just recording a reaction I'm having to the results out of Alaska, where Mary Peltola, the Democrat, has flipped this House seat, defeating Republican Sarah Palin in a second round of ranked choice voting. And, I just have a few thoughts on this. I mean, they're kind of disjointed, but I feel like I might as well share my thoughts on this anyway. One, the trends in the special elections at least have been pointing towards Democrats doing a lot better. And it's not just in this Alaska election, even though it's actually not that well indicative because you look at first choices and you see there's a lot more Republicans than Democrats. But also, the surge, as you see from another special election, particularly when Republicans failed to flip that House seat um, that in New York, that everyone assumed, oh, Republican Mark Molinaro was going to flip that, but yeah, the Democrat ended up winning and did better than Biden, and that's been a theme in the past several special elections. Um, but so there's definitely a Democratic surge that could correct itself by the midterms. Republicans could all of a sudden just decide, you know what, we've been sitting out these special elections. Now we're gonna show up. That could happen. That could happen. But you can't deny that the trend has lately been that Democrats are overperforming. You can also point to, the polls like in individual districts showing Republicans doing better. You could, but in that New York special election, and some of the others, there was a polling miss. So that's something else to keep in mind. But I think number two I'd like to point out is that candidate quality does matter. People we've learned this over and over again. When people nominate Republicans like Roy Moore, Democrats get elected in Alabama. When people nominate Republicans like Sarah Palin, Democrats get elected in Alaska. It repeats itself over and over again. And there are a number of races. Joe Szymanski has pointed this out. Republicans have not learned this lesson. You've got Dr. Oz running in Pennsylvania in what should be a slam dunk for Republicans. You've got J.D. Vance running in Ohio, who's probably going to win anyway. But again, someone like people like David McCormick and Matt Dolan would be running away with races like this. Blake Masters in Arizona, who's probably going to lose to Mark Kelly, and Herschel Walker, who's also locked in a very tight race with Raphael Warnock in what should be a vulnerable incumbent. That could go either way. But again, Republicans are stuck with bad incumbent after bad incumbent, including some of these governor's races, like in Maryland, Illinois, Massachusetts is looking like, and in Arizona in particular. Candidate quality is bad in some of these races on the Republican side, and sometimes on the Democratic side too. But yeah, we've got to clean up shop in terms of the candidates that we nominate. And finally, you're going to expect to see in the next few days and next few weeks attacks on ranked choice voting. I know my friend Eric Cunningham is not a fan of it. Tom Cotton also has tweeted stuff like how this is just rigging elections, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, people just don't understand how ranked choice voting works. It basically means you have to campaign differently, and you have to appeal to a broader set of people who maybe wanting to vote for someone else, but you're their second choice. That's basically how you win, is by having enough support in the first rounds and getting more and more people to rank you higher. That's basically how this works. And Nevada may end up voting on a similar system, and that could benefit Republicans. Ranked choice voting is not this whole magic panacea that's going to suddenly allow Democrats to win in all these places they couldn't previously. There are places where it'll help Republicans, particularly in Nevada, where geography has generally been a boon for Democrats. Contrast that to Wisconsin, where geography unquestionably helps the Republicans. But but if Nevada were to adopt a system like this, Republicans would have a better shot at state legislative races. So ranked choice voting is not this unquestionable evil. And I just have to ask, like, why is it that some people are so hell bent on the idea you have these districts that only register like partisans, basically deciding who the candidate's going to be with like 20% of the vote. Like what happened to Diana Harshbarger, who, yeah, she won her first primary in 2020 with like 20% of the vote, and no one seems to question the legitimacy of that election, and as no one should, because it was a legitimate election. But what ranked choice voting does is it basically forces you to broaden your support. There are other systems that do this in some ways, like people do first past the post with runoffs. That does also force you to appeal to a broader electorate. But ranked choice voting, I think, does that in a bit of a better, different, but sometimes better way, because it does it in one round, so you don't have to pay for like two separate rounds of voting. It's a very efficient system, and it's one that generally tends to appeal to, forces candidates to appeal to more people, which I think is a good thing. And there are places where maybe it wouldn't be the best fit. For example, in Canada, conservatives hate ranked choice voting, and liberals love it because liberals are everybody's second choice, although that might not necessarily be true anymore. So conservatives in Canada have tended to oppose things like ranked choice voting for that reason, because conservatives are never going to get a majority of the vote. So they always rely on vote splitting between the NDP and the Liberals. But it's not necessarily the case that if the NDP and the Liberals are united, the Conservatives would lose. There are people there. The electoral system would shake itself out. I have a feeling that Conservatives would be able to adapt to stuff like that. But I'm going off on a tangent. The point being that I'm trying to make is that ranked choice voting is going to be vilified in the next few days. But I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with the system. I actually like it when states decide of their own accord to experiment with different systems. And I think the only people who are really mad about it are the partisan Republicans and Democrats, who means that their candidates are no longer automatically going to win. I understand why the Ted Cruz of the AOC wing of the party would hate it, because it means they actually have to compete for a broader set of votes. And they know that their ideas would not be popular with a broader electorate, maybe even in their home districts. So, for that reason, I like systems that tend to force candidates to moderate and to broaden their appeal, because that really it means we tend to elect better politicians, and when we have systems that favor extreme candidates, you're not going to get candidates that govern. You're going to get candidates that like to use politics to as a showboat. They like people like Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan, Paul Gosar. They're show horses. They're not workhorses like someone like maybe Josh Gottheimer or Jen Kiggins if she gets elected, or some Maria Salazar. These people actually work to get stuff done, and also people like Jamie Herrera-Butler as well. People who are not in the news for saying things. They make the news for getting stuff done, and I think when more politicians are elected who like to get stuff done instead of just politicking all the time, on the whole, I think that's a good thing. And so that's why I tend to favor systems like ranked choice voting, or systems that broaden participation, because it means that we get better people who get elected. Anyway, these are just some of the thoughts that I had on the Alaska election, and I'll try to get this uploaded as soon as possible. But these results have just come in the last few minutes. It's a pretty surprising result. I don't know if it's going to have any bearing on November. It's again a ranked choice voting system, and you're going to have full turnout in November. I think that what I do think is the big effect is that I think people are going to give Nick Begich a second look. And I think they're going to say, you know what, forget Sarah Palin. I think we're going to go with this more sane Republican guy. And I think we're going to, and I think he's probably going to win. I think that Peltola, I think, is only going to be here for a few months. But it is the first time that a Democrat has been elected to Alaska, I believe, since 1972. And I believe it is she is the first Native American to be elected from Alaska. So, it's a big day for Democrats, but I think we shouldn't overinterpret, what exactly, the results mean. I think, it could ultimately mean not that much once we get past the elections. Anyway, thanks for checking this out. See you guys next time.